Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Maria Gonçalves podcast. I'm your host, Maria, and today we are joined with Michael Mayo. Welcome back, Michael.
Thank you, Maria. It's so great to be back. You brought me back so soon. I love it. It's exciting, and I'm looking forward to our great conversation.
Me too. I love having you here. And again, guys, if you don't have this book, go get it. Spirit Speaks. Michael breaks it down within your mediumship abilities. All those questions that you have, it's probably in here, the answer to. And Michael there's a surprise, right, Michael? The audio's coming out soon.
Yes, so the audio it probably will be out at the beginning of January, but that's the plan anyway right now. But it's completely done, so there is going to be an audio book that will be out very, very soon.
Oh, I love that. So look for that, guys, because I know some of you have been messaging me, asking me if it was out in audio. So now you know it's coming. Michael heard you, and it is coming. It is coming. Okay, so let me read a little bit about Michael for those of you that do not know him. Michael Mayo is an internationally respected medium, author, astrologer, healer, and spiritual teacher. He brings a practical, grounded, and evidential style to his spiritual work with his passion for teaching and helping others discover their own unique spiritual connection. He has taught and worked globally. He is the founder of Oakbridge Institute, an online school that strives to raise the standards of mediumship and psychic studies. So if you guys are curious about that, I am going to put the link below of the previous video I did with Michael because he goes into great detail about the school, the mentors, and all the amazing, incredible things that they do there. Um, Let's see, through his nearly 20 years of working with the spirit world, he has demonstrated his ability to connect with departed loved ones in both public demonstrations and private sittings by bringing messages of love and hope from the spirit world. His mission is to show that we, like love, are eternal, which is so important. And also, I will have all of Michael's social media links and websites so you guys can find him on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. He has a website, michaelmayo.com, and his school on his online school, oakbridgeinstitute.org. So I will have all of those links. So it'll be super easy to get in contact with Michael. So today I'm super excited because we're talking astrology and healing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excited about that too.
I'm super excited. So I gotta go to astrology. I really do
Sure.
because I don't really understand a lot of it. I feel like one day I will go study it, but I do get overwhelmed by there's a lot.
There is a lot. There's a lot. I mean, astrology was my first sort of interest and passion into sort of the occult topics. And it was because my mom was actually did astrology. And so she taught me some of it. So I'm in sixth grade, like the kid in sixth grade carrying around like Linda Goodman's love signs and like reading about their personalities and relationships. And that's when I started actually studying astrology. So, however old you are in that age. And then that's something that just sort of carried on throughout my life. And then there came a point where I actually had a teacher, and he was an incredible, incredible astrologer. He's passed now. But he took everything I knew and was just like, oh, here's the traditional way of working with astrology. And when I switched to some away from more modern astrology to more
Yeah.
traditional astrology, oh my gosh, the accuracy is incredible. I mean, I've been able to predict things many, many months in advance to the week, to the day. I've been able to find lost objects. Like we're talking like crazy things that you can do with astrology when you work with it in a more traditional sense rather than a modern sense. But yeah, so then eventually I started teaching my own mother, hey, here's some more techniques and advanced ways to understand astrology. And yeah, I've just kind of, it's always been with me forever. So
Yeah.
even though I'm not one that's out here being like, big astrologer, like, look at me, I'm the astrologer. Because, some people, that's like their whole jam. That's not my
Yeah.
whole jam. My whole jam is really like mediumship, psychic, and healing, that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
definitely something that I have spent most of my life learning and discovering and understanding. Because, like you said, it's a lot, and there's so many levels and layers to understanding it.
I am curious because, like healing, because once upon a time I got into healing, and I am that person that once I decide to go into a topic, I go deep and then I'm there for years because I'm trying to find the bottom of like, oh, I've learned everything. So with astrology, is it different like Western astrology to Eastern astrology, or is it different culture by culture? Like, do you know?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of forms of astrology. Astrology is one of those things that was kind of ubiquitous across the whole ancient world because they didn't have light pollution. Every
Yeah.
time you looked up at the sky, there was a whole scene of things shifting and changing. And so people looked to the sky, to the stars, because they believed that's where the gods were. Those were the gods moving through space and time, and they told stories using the stars, and that's why we have the different constellations and all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
So um, using the stars to predict what's happening here is something that has been used in every culture throughout time. It's always been there, and each culture kind of does have their own sort of set. So I know the most popular probably these days is Western astrology, which is comes out of the Hellenistic period, the Greeks, but even before them, the Chaldeans. And so that's more that sort of East Asian sort of placement. And then obviously the Greeks are more European, but then you have Vedic astrology, which is out of India. And so Vedic astrology has different rules, different set of how the planets are used and their meaning. But that is very, very much still used and a very excellent form of astrology. So there's different forms, different time periods that they come from, and they change over time. Especially Western astrology changed quite dramatically in the late 1800s. So it's super interesting. If you're a history person like me who loves that sort of thing, definitely look into like the history of astrology and this sort of thing. It's fascinating.
So which is your favorite type of astrology?
Well, I'm biased because I only know one, and that is Western astrology. So that's the one that we all kind of think of. Like, I'm an Aries, I'm a Virgo, I'm a Pisces, I'm a Leo, right? That is the kind of astrology that I do. What I do that's maybe a little bit different from some people is I tend to lean a little bit more in the traditional astrology rules rather than modern astrology rules. So somewhere in the gosh, I'm gonna have to be Googled later and corrected, but I'm sure someone can do that for me. But somewhere in the late 1800s, there was someone, Leo something, I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now. He kind of changed how astrology was used in the late 1800s. So before, astrology was very describing circumstances of life. Like that was really what it was. It predicted the things that you could expect to see happen. And so it was very prediction oriented. It wasn't until that late 1800s where it shifted. And this was when this gentleman was put on trial for fortune telling or something like that. And then it shifted. And he was like, no, 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 I'm not doing fortune telling. I am doing telling people about psychology, their personalities. That's what I'm doing. And that ended up shifting this entire sort of culture of astrology towards a more psychological focus rather than more predicting the future and what's going to occur. Now that doesn't mean that you can't understand people in the traditional sense and who they are and what they're like, but it's just a very different emphasis. So for
Yeah.
me, I love, if anyone knows me, I'm an evidence-based person. I like things that are provable, that are predictable, are repeatable. I'm very much that way. And so traditional astrology methods have this really profound connection to reality. Like we end up seeing these things happen when you make these predictions. So I tend to lean a little bit more into that with a little bit of maybe modern astrology um, mixed in. That's kind of my style.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. Like I'm a Scorpio, at least I don't know. My astrologer would say different, so I have an issue with that. So I'm like, I get very confused with that because she did a reading, and then I remember asking my mom, like, what time am I born at? And then my mom's like, yeah, you're born at 11. And then when I tell the astrologer, well, I was born at 11, and she's like, I'm sorry, Maria, I have bad news for you. I was like, what? Or what bad news are you going to tell me? She's like, you're a Libra. I was like, no, take it back. Take it back.
Ah, oh my God, I love that. Is it
I could
because
not
is
wrap my mind around it.
are you born on like the cusp there? Or are you like right around that cusp?
Yes, I'm a cusp. I'm the 23rd. So I'm like right down the middle. And you know what's funny? Years ago, is before COVID, James Van Prague came to my city. And was it I don't know if it was like the second or third time I met him, but he was in my city and somehow and my son was with him and we started talking about cusp birthdays. And he's like, I'm a cusp, you're a cusp, he's like, it's a good thing to be a cusp. And I'm like, little did I know that what a big difference it makes. But it was
Yeah,
really cool because I wasn't expecting that conversation. I'm like, there's a lot of people on the cusp. But I don't really understand what that means because I was like, take it back. You can't say that about me. My whole life, I've been told I'm a Scorpio. And then,
yeah.
like 2 years ago, you told me I'm not. And I'm like, I'm 55. It's like, what? Are you okay? I'm not doing well.
I love that. So the interesting thing about cusps is I personally don't put that much stock into them because I don't think that it's sort of this line of like blending of these two energies. The only reason why you usually see a cusp sort of have a little bit of both is generally because there are other planets that are nearby in one sign or another. So, like for example, not to get too technical, but like Mercury can never be more than more than a sign away from whatever sign the sun is in because it orbits so close to the sun. It really can't go that
Yeah.
far. So you might have a sun that's at 29 degrees Libra, and then you have a Mercury that's in Scorpio. That's going to add some of that Scorpio mentality, quality to who you are, even if you are maybe a Libra sun at like 29 degrees or whatever. So and then there are going to be other planets that also play a role. So your Mars, your Mercury, your Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, all these planets can all be influencing the color and the shade of you. That's why you can have two Libras. They're going to feel so different from one another because
Yeah.
I always say looking at just your sun sign is like trying to read a paragraph by just reading the first word. So you have very little information to go off of. That's just one little piece of the whole
Yeah.
chart. So when we look at the whole chart, we're taking into consideration not only your sun, but all the other planets, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. On top of that, we may also take into consideration your rising sign, its placement, and how all the rest of the houses play in, and then how these planets are interacting with each other. So there's so many different layers to a chart that the sun sign alone is just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of the whole picture.
But it's funny because they'll be like, and you're a Libra. I'm like, I'm a Libra because of 15 minutes? No, take it back.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can't.
that's why like a lot of astrologers were really particular about the time of birth. In fact, I know
Yeah.
many of us, we don't trust what mom said. Mom was having a child, so how is she going to
Yeah.
remember? So I want to see the birth certificate. I want to know exactly what's on that exact timing because that at least gives us a better idea because it does in some cases make a big difference between whether you're here or you're here. Just
Yeah.
depends.
So what happens? Okay, so you don't know the time for nobody. Do they just become noon?
That is one way to do that. You can use a default using noon. And you just have to understand that there's going to be some variation in that. It's not a great thing, but you can do it. Another thing that I've done, which is called rectification, is where we have you tell me a bunch of things that happened in your life, and then you take the person's chart at some sort of starting point and you look for um, big those big life events in like basically working from the life to get it to match what's in the chart, and then that way you can kind of find something that works, and that has work. It's a lot of work to do rectification, but it can be done, and it is pretty good. I mean, at least it's going to get you a lot closer than noon for sure.
Well, I'm like 15 minutes and I'm like, okay. And then I'm thinking, well, what about all those people back in the day that were like born in the villages, in the fields? Like, there's no clocks.
I love
The
that you asked
days.
that question. That's a great question. So, what we actually did in the past was something called orrery astrology. So
Yeah.
orrery, meaning of the hour or on the hour, people wouldn't necessarily do natal charts. I mean, they still had, I mean, depends on how far back we're going, but they still could measure time to some degree. Most of, I shouldn't
Yeah.
say most, but there was ways to measure the time. However, um, Ori astrology was the most commonly done form of astrology in Western astrology. And it's based off of the time you ask the question. So you actually would come to an astrologer with a very specific question, and then they would be able to give you the answer. So what we have today, where you're doing natal charts all the time, that wasn't as common back in the day. It was actually Ori astrology, and it's a very yes or no, this is the answer sort of form of astrology. So, for example, where is my lost key? Like, I lost a key, where is it? You can ask that question of an astrologer. They can look at a chart and they can tell you where to find it. So, that's what I have done in my own life where I had lost,
Yeah.
specifically that one, I lost a key, or where's the cat? Is the cat coming home? Like, there's all kinds of different questions that you can do. When am I going to get hired again? Like, when's my next job? Am I moving? And if so, how soon? Will I ever get married? All these things are orrery questions that you can ask, and that's actually what you would normally do for an back in the day. It wasn't so much looking at your natal chart and looking at the whole thing.
Yeah. So do you do that?
I do that. Yeah, that's a kind of astrology that I do. Yeah,
Because all of a sudden you're going to get all these
I
astrology
know, right? Then we get
readings.
all these questions. People are going to be booking me for orrery.
I got like a million questions in my head. I was like, oh my God, we don't need a psychic reading. We need an astrology
No,
reading.
honestly, like astrology is my backup. If I'm ever not feeling too psychic, I might suggest to someone, hey, you know what? This question I think works better for an astrology answer. And it's kind of one of those things that like it can be so accurate um, that I kind of don't ask questions sometimes. It's like what I found for myself is when I learned I could know exactly what the future was going to hold, I didn't want to know what the future was going to hold anymore because it takes all the fun out of it. Like I want the discovery, I want to learn. My biggest thing, I'm just going to throw this in here just because it popped into my head. If you don't know a whole lot about astrology, I don't recommend you going on and like reading a little bit and then freaking yourself out because this is what happens is people have enough information to be dangerous and they start like trying to predict their own futures and then they start freaking themselves out and they have all this anxiety and they're worried about what's going to happen this month and that month. So I don't recommend until you've learned how to properly sort of understand your charts and transits and all that sort of thing. I don't recommend doing that necessarily. Start learning, yes, but don't start looking at your own life and trying to predict what's coming because you're just going to freak yourself out because there's so many things you have to take in consideration when you're doing a prediction. So just throwing that out there because I know some people freak themselves out and they call me up and they go, Michael, I did the thing you told me not to do, and I started looking, and now I think I'm gonna die on Wednesday. And I'm just like, that's not what's happening. You missed this. You're not dying on Wednesday. So
That's funny. I've had different astrology readings, and I think the very first one I had, I did freak myself out because it was the first one and I didn't understand it. And this was years and years ago. And to be fair, half of it didn't even come true because then I became obsessed. I was like, oh my God, it's November. She said in November, this is like all going to fall apart. And then November came and went because you brace yourself. November came and went. It's like, oh, okay, I survived November. Oh
yeah,
no, is it going to happen in December? Like, I
exactly.
really, and then I didn't do like astrology readings for years because,
Yeah.
like, this just a question here because I have seen this happen. Do you go and predict death in astrology? Or you
I
stay away from
know
that.
how you do it. I don't do it though. I don't see
Okay.
the value in doing that. So yeah, even in my psychic readings, I don't ever predict death either. That's just like one of those things that I think there's too much room for possibility and error that to me, it's not really that worth trying to do that. Have I predicted people are going to recover from an illness or have I predicted
Yeah.
that people are going to get better? Yes. But I don't really comment on ones that I think aren't going to get better because I don't want to be that kind of bearer of those kinds of news. So yeah, I don't really tell people if they're going to die or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the only reason I asked, like, this is like a reading 20 years ago, and they have predicted deaths of certain people. It didn't happen, but again, the freak out, like, they're gonna die.
There you go. No, but
And
that's
I was like
exactly
in
what
my
I'm talking
head.
about.
Yeah, so for those listening, don't do it. Don't do it. And we're not in control of anybody's life, and people have free will, and they can change minds of their exit plan all the time.
Totally. And I think there's a half of me that agrees with that. And then there's the other half of me that's the astrologer half that goes, do we have free will? I don't know. So I actually live in a very Pisces place, which I believe both things are true. It's what's called compatibilism. So you have determinism and then like the free will. I live
Yeah,
in what's called compatibilism, which believes that there are some things that are determined and there are some things that are free will. And
yeah,
so some of those things, and I think even, especially when you come to death, right? I think this is a great example where you hear about near death experiences where sometimes people have a choice to go back or
yeah,
cross over, right? And then
yeah.
sometimes they're told you cannot come back, it's not your time. I think that actually tells us that the compatibilism is actually correct when it comes to our uh, death point, that there are exit points, and that sometimes you have a choice, sometimes you don't have a choice, whether that's coming back or crossing over. So I think both things can be true.
Oh, I had to make peace with and I had a hard time with do we have free will? Because I had a debate with another astrologer because at one point I'm just like I have no free will. I don't have free will anymore.
Astrology will make you think that.
So I'm like, this is gonna happen. I know this is gonna happen, but I know stuff about myself, and I'm like, do we even have free will? And then, yeah. So I finally made peace with that, but it took me a while because at one point I was just like, we got no free will.
Yeah, and honestly, like, hey, if that's the case, then great. Any choice that I make is what's meant to happen. So, I mean, that's also okay. So, I feel
Yeah,
like either one really is fine for me anyway. I'm like,
yeah,
that's why I live as a compatibilist. I think that we have free will to some things, and then there's other things or points that we're going to hit that are just true and they're just going to happen in our lifetime. So, that's kind
true.
of where I live.
Oh, yes, yes, I've made it there. I've
Yeah,
made it there.
yeah, yeah.
It took a while to get there because I was just so confused. I was like, but everything is happening and yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's a me issue. So I am curious because like with astrology,
Mhm.
people, because I've heard people say this, that they go for astrology readings to decide where to live.
Mhm. That's called astrocartography. And
Yeah.
astrocartography is not my area of expertise, but there are some people who are really, really good at it. I do question that. I have to see more data for me to kind of really fully buy into it. But I will say, just from the little bit that I have done, there was one. I lived in Australia for a little bit of time, and when I lived in Australia, it was one of the most transformational, most difficult, and challenging things that I had ever experienced. And one of the reasons, or not one of the reasons, astrocartography agrees with that because I think I had Pluto or Mars or something very, very close running through where I lived. And those
Yeah.
are, challenging planets, one being of transformation and death and rebirth. There was definitely a death and rebirth time period for me. So huge, huge personal spiritual growth and development due to being in Australia. So, yeah, I do think that there may be something to it, but I have to look a little bit more into it before I'm like fully, yes, I fully back this form of astrology.
Yeah. I don't know enough about it. I've heard other people say, I'm moving because I had a reading and it said this country is the best for me. I was like, really? I'm like,
That's
okay.
a little intense, but why not? Life's an adventure. Do it for the plot, as the kids say these days.
Oh, I
But
like that.
yeah, so like I'm a I think we should always use our own discernment, no matter what information that we're getting, right? Even if you're looking at scientific studies, you are going to take the data and you're going to discern what's right for you, right?
Yeah.
Versus even if we're looking at astrology or tarot reading or a psychic reading or whatever, you use your discernment on what you are willing to believe and take on and what you're not. I don't believe you should ever just do something just because someone else tells you. I don't care how talented they are at whatever craft they are. You never hand that power over to someone else. It's about you being empowered to make your own choices. This is just information. You can do with it what you will.
Oh, I like that, giving people back their power. Because I do find people think that because we're mediums or psychics, that we hold all, like we're almighty, all powerful. And we're not. We're just
Really
human.
not. Promise you. I promise. We don't know everything. And actually a lot of us don't know anything. And so that's sometimes what makes a good medium. So it's about you making your own choices, and that's really the most important thing.
So I know we were talking earlier, you have psychic coming up in your school, like psychic studies.
Yeah, so we actually
So
just wrapped our first round of the new and improved psychic course that we did, and everyone did really well. We were really, really impressed with it, and I kind of thought to myself, like, dang, okay, well, we definitely improved on this course because everybody was doing exceptionally well, getting very accurate information. So we're actually going to start that up again in
okay.
January, I want to say it is. I think it should be on the website already at oakbridgeinstitute.org. But yeah, it's a really, really great program that teaches you the foundations of how to work psychically. And we get to experiment with different forms of psychism. You get to work with your different clairs and understanding what those are. But we also, you work up to doing remote viewing and working on cold cases and all kinds of things that we throw at you closer to the end. It's a 22 um, week course, so it's a
Okay.
good foundations in that.
Oh, that sounds good. So my next question for you, because I have seen this on social media where somebody will post, "Do you think you're intuitive?" And then I watch the thread and there are a lot of people that actually think they can't be psychic. So can you please explain that to people? Like, can they be psychic? Can they take a course? Do they have an ability or not?
Absolutely. I love this question because it's one of the things I'm most passionate about in teaching and showing people is that everybody can do it to some degree, barring any sort of like strong mental disability. Anyone can do this, and it is because you are a spiritual being having a human experience. You are spirit first, so your consciousness is connected to all the things. In fact, I personally believe that all of matter, all of life, everything springs out of consciousness. Consciousness is the underlying fabric in all of it. And so you are truly connected to all things. And when we talk about healing, I think it really demonstrates that. But you're connected to all things. And therefore, the only thing that is limiting your perception of yourself is your brain, literally. Your brain is the condenser of your consciousness so that you can walk around and be Maria and I can walk around and be Michael. It's so that our brain acts as a condenser of consciousness. So when we die, the brain is no longer there to condense it. We connect back into everything that is there. So the point of psychic and mediumistic development is to learn how to quiet the thinking mind, turn down the volume on this sort of condenser so that you can have access to more of what you already are. And when we access that more piece, that's when we start to access intuitive psychic information. It's when we start to access our loved ones in spirit. It's all learning how to quiet the thinking mind so we can access more of what we already are.
Oh, I love that. So for those of you guys listening, anybody can tap into this. You don't need to be gifted, special. It's you. So I love that because I do see those debates on social media. I'm just like, but
Yeah,
we're all the same. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure, Maria. I'm like, but you are. You're a spiritual being. Of course, you're intuitive. Like that gut feeling. I always remind them if you have a gut feeling and it doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel right. Well, guess what? That's your intuition. That's your psychic working for you.
yeah.
So I love that you demystified that for people. So for healing, you're a healer, right?
Yeah, so this is actually the newest unfoldment in my ability, and it is pretty awesome. So I, spent, almost 20 years developing my mediumship. And so I feel real, clear on exactly how that works, why it works, et cetera, et cetera. Very easy to teach to other people. But just last year, I believe it was, I stumbled into an opportunity to learn a form of healing that is very simple, straightforward, doesn't even have a name. I think the easiest way to call it is just energy medicine. And it is incredible. So, for anyone who has ever heard of Charlie Goldsmith, who is a healer, he had a TV show called The Healer.
Yes, yes.
It was through his education that I learned that. So he had something where you could have a monthly subscription and you just watch his videos and you can learn how to do it yourself. So it was interesting because I had a student who was like, "Hey, can you learn this healing modality? Because I feel like it's going to be really, really good." And I learned it, and I feel like you could learn this and you could do it for me because she had an illness chronic illness that she struggled with. I was like, "Okay, I'll try." I gave it a shot. Was learning, watching all the videos. It's not a very step-by-step process. It's a very just discover on your own sort of thing. Here's what I do, see if it works for you. And so I was trying, and then I wasn't getting anywhere. And I was like, okay, maybe, maybe not. Maybe this isn't my thing. But then my friend was able to do it. And I was like, huh, well, if she can do it, I can definitely do this. Like, come on, there's got to be a way. I just have to figure
Yeah.
that out, which is my whole mentality. Is like, if anyone can do anything, I can learn how to do it too. So then
Yeah.
um, he was going to be, surprisingly, because he's Australian, he was going to be in LA doing some a live demonstration. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll go check out this live demonstration. And for whatever reason, just watching him do it, something clicked in my brain, and I was like, oh, this is what he's doing. So then I went back home, and I had a friend who had a headache, and I was like, hey, let me just try this thing. And her headache
Yeah.
went away. And I was like, okay, headache's gone. Cool. Then the next night, my friend had a severe sciatica flare. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me try this thing. Went from a level 8 pain, like I don't know, scale of 1 to 10, to 0. And she was fine. And I was like, what the hell? So then I decided to go on TikTok and do live healings and just like have people come up. What's your problem? Like just bring out your illnesses and troubles and I'll work with you. So I ended up doing many healings, all of which went from whatever the top pain was to 0 or function. And one in particular stood out to me. It was a lady that had a frozen shoulder. And I don't know if anyone doesn't know what a frozen shoulder is. It's basically lack of mobility in your shoulder that's due to these bands that start to form that are like protein bands or something like that, that create it so you have no more mobility. So some people can't move their shoulder at all. And Charlie had talked about working on some people with frozen shoulder by doing XYZ. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just try what he did. Well, I used the energetic form of a real life process that they do, which is they inject cortisone into those bands and things like that into the shoulder. And it helps it. So I did the energetic version of that.
Yeah.
And by the end of the video, she's flinging her arm all the way around when she could only move it like that. That was all the mobility that she has. So by the end, her whole arm was completely freed from being frozen shoulder. And I did that in 13 minutes, you know?
Wow.
So it's a really profound, very powerful thing, but so simple. So I decided that I would then create a course to teach other people how to do it because I was like, well, it's clearly learnable. Now I just need to figure out how to teach it to other people. And we, I think, are in our third or fourth session in that right now, and they all can already do it. They're already out there helping people that have had, issues. Like one person, she worked on her dad who hadn't slept properly since like 2001 or something like that through the night because of issues that he had. And
Yeah.
since she did one healing on him, he's been able to sleep through the night every night since. So she said, that was the worth the whole thing. If just that one healing that I was able to do, that was worth the whole thing. So it's an amazing, amazing process. It's incredibly simple and straightforward. I think everybody can learn this. So yeah, that's the healing that I'm doing.
I like that. They used to do that a lot here in hospices. And then we
Mhm.
had some laws and rules, so a lot of that changed. But do they still do that like in the States? like
I
energy healing
don't,
and
I don't
hospices
know.
and
I
people?
actually don't know. That's a question for, I think they do things like that in hospitals. There is definitely things where like Reiki and other energy forms are allowed in certain hospital settings that I've heard.
Yeah.
Now, Charlie himself is actually working with some really top medical professionals, research hospitals. There has been studies done on him for the healing work that he does. And so it's definitely something very, very real. And I really do think most people can learn this. And you can, I mean, just it's so demonstrative that like it honestly is hard to comprehend. Like you hear like, oh, you have this chronic pain that you've had for 14 years, and in like one or two sessions of this, it's completely gone. Like
Yeah.
what? Like you're, and even in the moment, people are often like, how? Like their brains can't comprehend that I've been suffering with this thing and it's just gone now. And it's all just intention and energy. That's
Yeah.
literally all you're doing. It's incredible.
Well, you hear stories. I know in Portugal, there are stories of people that live in the middle of nowhere in the mountains and they're healers and they
Yeah.
just have this strong faith and intention, and people will come from all over just to have them lay their hands on them and
Yeah.
walk away. Like you hear stories of that around the world, which I think is so amazing. And I love that now it's more mainstream and not like this secret in the mountains.
Totally. Well, and what's cool about it too is that all the work I've done, except for maybe a handful, have all been online. So I've
Yeah.
never had to be in person with anybody. I can literally just do it from wherever. Sometimes I just get text messages, hey, I'm dealing with XYZ. Can you just quickly? And I'm like, yeah, here you go. Like it just happened the other day when my students who I worked on, she had restless leg syndrome and
Yeah.
she was making her have a lot of pain. And I worked on her, brought it down to zero, and then it kind of came back a little bit that night. And I was like, she's like, hey, can you just quickly zap me? Because I said, if it comes back, I'll just give you a little zap and then we'll keep going. And she's texting me and I'm like filling out a tax form, cooking dinner, like doing all these things. And I just like in my intention and in my own awareness, just send the energy. And then she's like, okay, it's gone. It's amazing. Thank you so much. Like it was just crazy. Even with like being a little bit distracted, it was still very effective. So it's amazing. So I think that, you know, what I like is stuff that works, repeatable, works, and in my own work I kept a log of every healing that I did, and
Yeah.
then I eventually did a analysis of, because this is who I am, I did an analysis of like the success rate, and in 90% of people that I worked on, they had some level of improvement, with 80% of those people being what am I looking for, marked or complete resolve of whatever the issue is. And we're talking about neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain, mobility,
Yeah.
neuropathy, symptoms from MS, symptoms from other severe illnesses, and things like that, and getting great improvement. Um, and there was 10% of people, I get nothing, zero, can't get it to budge, can't get anything to have happen. And it's pretty amazing. I actually demonstrate this healing either on TikTok a lot, or I will do demonstrations of healing in like events and things like that. And you just
Yeah.
have people come up from the audience and you work on them in front of the people and then send them on their way. So yeah, it's an amazing thing.
So, do you think we can do self-healing on ourselves?
Yes, I do. I strongly believe that. I've noticed that it seems to take longer than when I work on someone else. So everybody's different. Some people come to me with like all kinds of pain throughout their body, and in 5 minutes, all their pain is to zero. Like that's how quick it can be. Other people have to sit and work a lot longer. So sometimes I'm sitting there for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, to work on each of these processes of what's kind of going on with them. And what I found is those are sort of the range of how long it takes. For self-healing, I notice it overall takes a little bit longer. Not sure why. I don't know the reason why, but when I have to like work on something for myself, I have to like spend more time than I think it would take if it was someone else. So if I have a headache, most people I can get rid of the headache within a minute or two, maybe 5 minutes. Let's go that. For me, if I'm doing it for myself, I have to kind of sit there for a bit and I have to like really focus and I have to just like let this energy flow and do the thing that it's going to be. And so it might take me 15 minutes. It might take me a little bit longer to actually get rid of it for myself. So I don't know why that is, but I do notice it takes a little longer when you're working on yourself.
Oh, I find that interesting. I personally, because I was a Reiki master, I can never do headaches. I
Oh,
couldn't,
really?
but I could do serious pain. But
Yeah.
headaches, forget it. I'm not the headache person. But I was a friend. It's like, you got a migraine, go to her. She'll get rid of your headache. But
Yeah.
if you have like chronic pain, come to me. I'll get rid of it
100%.
temporarily for that point in time. Because then I find then people have to do their inner healing and their inner work too.
Sure. Yeah. And I do think that is the case sometimes. And I think that that comes more so when the source of the illness is something mental emotional in its
Yeah.
first iteration. But like if you have like a truck come and smash your leg, that's not a mental emotional thing, in my opinion. That came from the truck hitting your leg. And so
Yeah.
that's the source. But for some things like pain and chronic issues and stuff like that, there is a mental emotional component. And that is something that needs to be addressed, I think, to fully heal that process. Otherwise, it can come back. So it just depends on what it is and where the source is, at least in my experience.
Yeah. So with this course, how does it work for people that may be interested in taking the course with you guys? It's with you, right? You're teaching it?
Yeah. Mhm.
So how many weeks? Is it once a week? Is it online, in person for those that are
Yeah.
listening?
So the course is online, but this is why I'm actually teaching a pilot course to see all of those answers, to see how long does it take to teach someone,
Yeah.
how long do I want, how much information do I need to provide to them to get them prepared to do this work, to get them to kind of the level and the space that they need to be able to do this. And so I don't have all of those answers yet. It honestly
Yeah.
seems a lot shorter than I initially thought. I thought that there might be
Yeah.
a little bit more time, but I think maybe the time component has more to do with shaping their professionalism and being able to recognize, what they can help, what they can't they help, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as like learning the actual technique, it's very straightforward. And if, honestly, I'm almost wondering if it can be done in a day, in a workshop, in something like that, because it's that easy to teach. All of the students, I think there's like 25, 26 students in the class. Every single one has been able to get rid of pain and help people thus far. And that was after, I think, maybe the second class. So it's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. Yeah. So I'm not sure how long it's going to be, but what it will look like once this pilot course is over, I'm not sure yet how what that's going to look like. But if they are interested, they can reach out to oakbridgeinstitute.org and they can say, "Hey, I'm interested in the healing course when it comes out again, which will be probably somewhere in February, is my guess."
Yeah. I was just here sitting thinking to myself, back in the day, like hundreds of years ago, everybody was probably a healer and doing astrology and doing mediumship and psychic. And then you kind of forget or something happens in history and it's like we're relearning everything again like it's brand new, but I don't think it is.
Oh, I
I feel
completely
like our
agree.
ancestors were doing it for hundreds of years. We just kind of, I don't know, forgot about it or something.
Absolutely. I mean, and we can look to kind of the scientific revolution as a part of that, which, has a lot of great things that brought with it. But then there was also this strong lean into materialism, which I think eliminated the possibility that these other things were true. Now, as I kind of think about that, though, there is this sense of there's always been people who had these abilities. It's just that do we believe them? And they still are now today. There's still people around, in more traditional cultures and things like that that do have these things. There's a place for them. But I think in our Western society, that was really edged out due to religion and also scientific revolution, where these things were
Yeah.
no longer valued and then lost to time the traditions and things like that that would have taught other people how to do them.
But it's coming back.
It's
So I
coming
love it.
back. Yeah, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
coming back to the point that, like, even if you're scrolling on social media, I feel like it's normal now. Where if you
Totally.
were looking at social media 10 years ago, you wouldn't see so much of it.
No. definitely not. And as someone who's been in this realm for like the last 20 years,
Yeah.
um, when I first started off, it was the demographic for people who are interested in spiritual things were women over 40, and that was about it. Like you didn't really see younger people into it. You didn't see a lot of men into it.
Yeah.
Now it's a whole swath of people. Like
Yeah.
everybody is like into it now, and I think that's a good thing. I do also think it creates a little bit of the wild, wild west because people get a little bit of information and they start jumping out there thinking they can do everything. And that
Yeah.
always is concerning because there's no, I don't know the word for it, discernment or
Regulation.
yes, in regulation, exactly. And that creates a problem. So
And I think too, reminding people of ethics is super important because there
100%.
is no ethics in the Wild West. We got to remind people.
Exactly.
So, welcome back, Michael. For those of you guys that may have noticed, he kind of froze a little bit, but he's back. So, Michael, I was here just sitting and thinking about everything that we've talked about during our time together. And it's so interesting because, like, for myself, very young, we grew up in Portugal on a fisherman village. Some like everybody in the village is a fisherman. We're on the coastline. But the one thing I remember as a little girl, like then, my parents came to Canada, but we would always go back every other summer. But the one thing I remember in the village is people always, like the farmers, always looking up at the stars and be like, the
Mm,
stars are saying this, the moon is saying that. So I feel like, and one of the things we were talking about was so much of this has been forgotten and
yeah,
we're back in the remembering. I'm sure the farmers out there in the world have not forgotten anything because they rely on it for the harvest and to do what they need to do. But I remember those conversations as a little girl, just be like, look at the stars, the sky is saying this tonight, the weather's going to be this. So I find that so fascinating that like astrology, the healing, the psychic, it's always been within us. We just forgot.
absolutely. And I think that there's always been roles for this in our cultures and in our society. We've always had the wise one that looked to the stars and told us what was happening, or the healer in the village that would do the healing for our physical bodies and this sort of thing. And then the prophet, right? So I mean, all of
Yeah.
these roles have been in our cultures this whole time, and we are remembering them, and we are kind of it's interesting how we have this like moment of like extreme technology with like AI and all this sort of thing sort of
Yes.
happening, and then this simultaneous like harkening back to nature and what we are and like reconnecting with the earth and that sort of thing. And I really do see both of these things happening at the same time, which I find really, really interesting. So it'll be interesting to see, what we do with it. And I think my role in all of that is to be the teacher that shows it, is to bring back some of those old ways, because that's one of the ways in which I get my information is through traditional things that have worked in the past and bringing that to today in the modern society. So yeah, I think that's incredible.
I think like I had an aha moment on
Yeah,
this podcast episode. Just the remembering of who we are for those that are listening, that, we're healers, we're psychic, we're mediums, just the remembering of what our soul calls us to do in this lifetime. And when we're talking about do we have free will, don't we have free will, I find it such a fascinating topic because it grounds us.
totally. 100%. And I also think that what you're doing here is helping people remember,
Yeah.
with your podcast, and you're teaching people and you're showing people, these ways that are going to help them connect to something bigger than themselves, this part of themselves that is much bigger than this sort of
Yes.
physical thing. And we as human beings are so magical, and we as spiritual beings are even more magical. And we can see that magic be real when we kind of take away all of the make believe and the fantasy. And as we were talking about the wild, wild west, when we bring it
Yes.
back to a grounded place that is rooted in what we actually are, not something we have to actually become. We already are this. It's just about revealing what these possibilities are within you. And that's why I always tell my mediumship students, I always say, the thing that you're trying to become, this medium, this like person who can connect to this spiritual realm, you are already that right now. That's already the case. You have that. The only thing we're doing now is just removing any blocks that we have to experiencing that. So it's not that you have to become something. You don't have to become special or raise your vibration in a certain way or become into this sort of other spiritual being. You already are that. It doesn't matter if you're working as a lawyer, it doesn't matter if you're a janitor, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're a scientist, you're still a spiritual being having a human experience. So you already are this thing. And you're here to learn and grow and discover and evolve your soul in some way or another. And then you'll do it again. And you'll continue to grow and learn and discover. And so I think you and I, as teachers of this sort of thing and sharers of this knowledge, are merely just showing one way to develop yourself and learn and discover.
And I like what you said at the beginning of the interview. Use discernment, see what feels right. Take what feels right, leave what doesn't, because I think that's super powerful in having these conversations because somebody might be listening, be like, I don't know about Maria. And that's okay. Take what feels right and just keep growing, exploring, and following your heart. And I want to say, Michael, thank you so much for this time. And again, guys, don't forget to follow Michael, check out his school if you guys want to learn more about healing, psychic development, mediumistic abilities. You're not teaching astrology though, are you? It's
I
that's for
will.
me.
So if you are interested in learning astrology, I will likely be teaching that in this next year as well. So you can always just shoot us an email. We'll put you on a wait list for the astrology course as well.
Oh, that's exciting. So, for those of you that are overwhelmed by astrology, go see Michael. He will break it down and simplify it for you step by step. So, that is awesome. So, and again, once again, don't forget his book, Spirit Speaks. It is coming out on audio beginning of next year. So, look for that. And thank you so much for your time, Michael.
Thank you, Maria. It's always a pleasure. I can't wait to come back.
Yes, I'd love to have you back. All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.